It's that time of the year again, and, oh boy, it's been pretty rough, hasn't it? I mean, we're gonna be scraping the bottom of the barrel for this one. Although, I will say that I did find 5 games that were worthy of the list. It was pretty difficult, but I managed to find 5. As always, we'd like to talk about games that are fun on this channel. That seems weird, but there are some games that are kind of artsy-fartsy, games that really don't meet the mark in terms of gameplay, but are still worth mentioning. Although, we're gonna be changing it up this year with my honorable mention, and that is Resident Evil 8, or Resident Evil Village, whatever the hell you want to call this thing. This is a game that feels so by the numbers at this point. So middling, so just average to above average, but still being, oh my god, it just revels in its own mediocrity sometimes. The first part of this game was kind of disappointing to me. It was kind of linear. The middle half of this game was just non-existent. You kind of just blasted through your way through like 2 hours of content. And then you were at the final real level of the game, the factory, and I felt while it was a good level, it was still so by the numbers and just so uninteresting. And by that point, I had so much ammunition and guns and all this crap that I just blasted through every enemy. I didn't feel like I was conserving ammo and timing my shots and perfecting, optimizing my route. I was just going through the motions of just mindlessly walking to find keys and just blasting any enemy I could see with a giant machine gun or a bazooka. It was boring, honestly. Like the gameplay was fun, and yet it was somehow boring at the same time. We're just going through the motions at this point with these Resident Evil games. This is the first time I'm feeling burned out with the series, and I'm really, really worried about Resident Evil 4, the remake that's coming out, or remaster, redo, whatever the hell they're calling it. I have no idea what they're doing with that game. I don't know. I'm worried that Capcom's gonna burn us out, and Resident Evil 4 is probably gonna be in trouble, or at least whatever comes after that is gonna be in trouble. And, man. Anyway, 8 is okay. It's fine. It's fun. It's safe. It's whatever. I enjoyed, like, 4 hours of it immensely, and then the rest of it was just whatever. Ugh. God, I hate everything now, don't I? Oh my god, I hate this. I hate it so much. Alright, now that the honorable, or should I say dishonorable mentions are out of the way, let's get into the list. Number 5, Trash Sailors. I'm a huge proponent of couch multiplayer games, but I feel like a majority of them, especially the smaller ones, are just one-and-done party-type titles. I look for the same elements in these couch games with your friends as I do in my single-player games, that being great variety, strong progression. Trash Sailors manages to not only maintain these two things, but also a simple, yet very fun gameplay loop on top of that. It is very much a multiplayer-focused game. Yes, by extension, it is a fun-with-friends title, something that I kind of despise, replacing good single-player content for something that's only enjoyable if you buy 3 extra copies to play with your friends. But, it is local, so you don't have to do that, thankfully. Everyone could just share the same TV. And it's, honest to God, so enjoyable that I can forgive it for lacking a good single-player experience. This game is relaxing one moment, and then panic-inducing in another. You're essentially on a raft made of garbage that you salvage from the ocean. You're constantly utilizing trash to fuel your ship, whether that be repairing it, reinforcing it, running it, or selling it for upgrades. You also have unlockable characters with different perks to lean into different playstyles, and you can customize your sailors with cosmetics that you can unlock. The ship itself can be equipped with all kinds of stuff, and it's really useful as you deal with the game's many challenges. Tons of enemy types and hazards are always out to destroy your ship, and they utilize many mechanics to make things interesting. It's honestly a game that appeals to me on a mechanical level in so many ways. Even though it seems simplistic, it's easy to enjoy one of the many roles you could switch to at the drop of a hat depending on your situation. I did really like driving the boat, but blasting debris with the cannon and staving off attacks from monsters was also really cool. I'm not sure about the online component, but I heard it has issues, although it seems to have been fixed now. But this is really going to be a review of the local multiplayer experience. So, by all means, give the developers your support if you like what you see and you have a few friends nearby to play locally. It's a unique and fun game that's worthy of your time if you have the people to play it with. And yes, it doesn't really have a single player experience, but the multiplayer is so much fun that I highly recommend this game. And as a result, it squeaks to number 5 on my list. Number 4, Pronti, a fishy adventure. Or just Pronti. I think most people who have played video games to a certain degree have always fantasized about making their own. If I were to pick a few themes and make something small but also really captivating, I would do an underwater side-scroller with an emphasis on visuals and sound design to match. And if I was feeling a little bit more ambitious, I would do a little bit of Metroidvania in there as well. I always loved watching those undersea life documentaries as a kid, being fascinated with what goes on down there from reality to myth. Pronti is a game that utilizes a lot of that myth and reality. In reality, there's a diverse and colorful world down below. The game is a feast for the eyes and even the ears. And in myth, there's also the horrors that are well emphasized as well. Pronti is a game that seems innocent and cutesy, but it ends up being extremely dark, and that was a welcome surprise as it really shook things up, and the aesthetic absolutely nailed this direction. Everything is here, from vibrant colors and exotically detailed areas to horrific undersea abominations and leviathans. The sound design also enhances the experience significantly. This immersion, this underwater world, is detailed further in the game's excellent writing for its lore. Yes, this cutesy Metroidvania light title has lore. The entries are real page-turners. The game starts you out as some new gung-ho recruit in the new fish army, I guess, but through events out of your control, entire cities and towns are being destroyed with almost no one around to explain why or what exactly is happening. You always seem to be getting to these towns a little too late and they're already destroyed and there's no one there. All you know is that some ancient evil monstrosity of a fish is destroying entire cities and you've got to stop it, but how is anyone's guess? I think the game does a really good job building up its world, its atmosphere, and the backstories from that lore are just really interesting to read. It's not just some, here's a big bad guy and he's gonna ruin everything. No, there's a little bit of build-up in the story and the details. Of course, you'd want the gameplay to be as good as the story, and it's pretty fun, but it is pretty simplistic, unfortunately. It's a game with some fun combat, decent enemy variety, and some very fun and creative boss fights. The game leans more into its aesthetic and narrative, while the gameplay is just a fun, simple time with not too much depth. But it is still fun. I was expecting a lighthearted Metroidvania game, and what I ended up getting was a very dark Metroidvania light game. It's worthy of number 4 easily for taking a lot of what I love in a game, and also surprising me with something really interesting. It's one thing to have a good concept, it's another thing to execute it, and Pronti really does a good job here. If the combat had a bit more to it, and if the gameplay could scale up just a little bit more, this game could have shot up higher on the list. As it stands, it earns very easily a comfortable spot at number 4 on my list. Number 3, Chorus. This is a game that has a lot of problems, but my god, is it refreshing to play a spaceship, single-player game that is actually out and not in development limbo for all of eternity. Chorus is a game that puts gameplay at the forefront with excellent ship controls and tight combat. It's one of those games where the core gameplay is so good that it elevates everything else. Even mundane side quests are made engaging by the exceptional gameplay. So, why is it only number 3? Well, because gameplay is only one part of it. It's a huge part of any game, but it's not the whole picture. Chorus definitely has interesting moments outside of its gameplay, an attention-grabbing story, some great tracks, and some gorgeous graphics, but the rest are kinda hit or miss. The story's interesting, but the delivery is done through a ton of exposition where the character talks to herself. You can hear her throughout the game, you're in her head basically. And while I prefer this to having tons of dialogue and cutscenes and scripted sequences shoved down my throat where I'm not playing the game, I feel that there are better ways for telling a story than what they did here. The voice actress herself does a pretty good job, but I feel the voice direction and the constant need to hear everything going on in her head does hurt the gameplay immersion a bit. Some of the side character voices are a bit of a mixed bag too. There are also some downright frustrating design decisions, like how going anywhere near a main story quest will pull you into it, even if you aren't right near the waypoint marker. So you could be off doing something, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, we gotta push you into the main story. It's like, no, I didn't want to do this mission, stop. And of course, you have your mediocre or downright poorly designed side quest or two. There was one in particular, there was a racing one, where I could just feel the blood vessels in my brain just about to pop from anger because of how poorly it was designed. Basically, you're racing someone, and the game will only kind of let you win if you accelerate past them at certain points. If you're constantly accelerating past this character, the game has this weird physics system where they'll try to catch up and slam into your ship and actually kill you, even though it's supposed to be a friendly race. I died like 4 times because I was faster than the other ship, but the game's like, no, you can't play it like that. You have to get faster. At this point, if you're faster at the beginning, we're gonna adjust the camera so you can't even see this guy, and then he just sidewinds you. It's awful. Awful. But yeah, that comes with the territory, unfortunately, with, you know, a game on a budget under $60. And I can kind of forgive that, but it is frustrating when it comes up. Chorus is one of those games where I could about recommend it on gameplay alone, but it's the extra elements from its interesting narrative that help push it up further and help hold my interest. And that's important. Like, you know, you have gameplay that's fun, but it is still a spaceship game. It's not super complex. And the story is helpful to a degree that it does hold your interest, and the gameplay, of course, is fun. Gameplay is king, but there are too many shortcomings overall to put this title higher on the list. That and the fact that there are some bugs in this game still, and Deep Silver has been kind of quiet on promoting this game. It seemed like it didn't do too well at all, and updates might be cut short, and there are still some problems with it that need to be fixed, so I'm worried that this game is just not going to get fixed for whatever reason. But if you're a diehard fan of these flight comic games like I am, it's at least worth getting on a sale. And while I did enjoy it to a degree, I do have my reservations about it, so I will be putting this at number 3 on my list. Again, great game, but there are some caveats, there are some shortcomings that it needs to work out. Hopefully it will in post-launch support, if it gets any.
Watch out, Raven.
Copy. I'll take them down.
Number 2, Samurai Warriors 5. Okay, I know I'm gonna get flack for this one. How could I put a by-the-numbers Musu game this high up? Well, I got nothing. It's really a case of it being a guilty pleasure and the fact that it's extremely polished for what it is and ultimately fun. It's also just more difficult to beat and cover every game on this list, so I never really reach the high point for a lot of these games, that being the climax. And when I do get it, it's often disappointing, like Resident Evil 8, which only negatively impacted the game for me. I was totally content with just getting through that game to, like, the dollhouse and then stopping there and being like, oh, okay, I guess I got it, it's fun, I'll pick it up later when I have time, but, I beat that game and I ended up hating it more, so, geez. Anyway, Samurai Warriors 5, and the Musu style of games in general is an easy game and genre to figure out, and it's easy to talk about as a result. You've kind of just beaten it already, even if you've only played a few levels of it. Like, sure, there are other unlockable characters and story and additional weapons, levels, and different bosses, but essentially, it's just like having another pizza slice. Once you've had the first slice, you can generally guess what the rest of the game is going to be like. It might also include different toppings for each slice, but you can tell by looking at it, what it's going to be. All that stuff underneath your pepperoni and olives is the same, and this slice of Samurai Warriors 5 is pretty good. It's a bit expensive for what it is, but Koei has already been discounting their games heavily shortly after release. I got mine for like $30, so pretty good. And that's actually good that they discount them, because, you know, that's great for newcomers to their various series, and of course, their diehard fans are so beyond saving, they'll buy anything at launch and defend it to death, which is why their ports were so bad for such a long time. It took Dynasty Warriors 9 being so fucking abhorrent that even their fans, their diehard fans, said to Koei, enough is enough, I'm not buying this crap anymore. Each Warriors game is that pizza analogy, but there are different toppings on it. But sometimes you get fucking bubblegum and marshmallow on one, which is what Dynasty Warriors 9 was. And furthermore, we've had the fucking pizza box be damaged on the way to the house, with the pizza sliding out as it almost hits the ground. Koei for the longest time has been neglecting their PC audience with bad ports year after year. So Koei eased back on releasing garbage and started putting in effort, and it really shows as of late. They started remastering or re-releasing their back catalog of older titles, and they've done a great job getting their newest titles over to the PC without too many issues, and all their new releases are quite good, at least, you know, a week or two after launch. Samurai Warriors 5 in particular, I'm having an immensely good time with, and that's partly from not having to deal with the complicated PC port issues for such a simplistic game. And I think it's about time I actually talk about it. Samurai Warriors 5 is not so much different from the other Musou games, but you can tell they actually gave a shit in putting some effort into this release, and as a result, they've brought a ton of focus to it, resulting in a lot of fun. What you see on the screen is what you get. It's a 1 vs 1000 3D brawler fighting game where flashy moves, combos, and overpowered attacks are king. It might seem like it would be extremely repetitive, but it's really fun to play due to its sheer variety and simplicity in its combat system. It's fun to chain enemies together to rack up as many points as possible for the end screen, where you get more resources to upgrade your characters and gear. It's a love it or hate it type of series, and I love it. Die-hard fans are complaining about the game being trimmed down compared to previous entries. I can't exactly relate, as I haven't played the previous entries, as it was about 7 years ago that the last Samurai Warriors game came out on PC, and that was during Koei's dark age of PC ports, of which I still refuse to buy and play due to the headaches they cause. So I can't offer any input in that area, but I will say that the game has more focus than its other series. It might have a smaller roster, according to fans, but I see that as a good thing. The game focuses on a story, characters with a good moveset first and foremost, and also adding little mechanics throughout the game to shake up the gameplay, while also adding reasonable challenge where previous games totally lacked it or just felt like it was just a mess. I still think the game's default difficulty is on the easy side, and unfortunately the higher difficulties are still just make the enemies spongier and frustrating and annoying to fight. But they have managed to balance it out a lot more this time around. The music is still awesome to listen to while slashing away at hundreds of enemies, and the new cel-shaded art style was a fantastic idea to bring new life into the otherwise aging 3D graphics. I just don't think it should be $60, but if the fanboys want to simp for Koei and buy it day one, and then Koei discounts it at like half off merely months down the road for people like me, and deliver a good PC port on top of it with some fun gameplay, the fans can simp all they want. I will reap the rewards this time. While it's not significant when comparing it to the rest of the series, Samurai Warriors 5 is deeply enjoyable for me, and for an entry to the Musou franchise, it's pretty good. Its moment-to-moment gameplay gives it a high replay value for me. I can start it up and play it at any time, and still get enjoyment out of it no matter my mood. Sometimes it's nice to play something stupid and cheap. Doesn't mean that it's not a ton of fun, though. Alright, now for the final game. The game I feel deserves the #1 spot for Game of the Year for 2021. My #1 game of this year is...
Someone near us? Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Got his ass.
Nice.
Up on the ridge. On the catwalk! There you go!
Oh! It's okay. We just got a little EMP.
Suppressive fire!
Oh, get in the fucking warthog,
Oh,
you
he's
pussy!
too
Oh
tall,
shit!
too tall. Oh, God. Get around the corner. Oh, shit. Up there.
Oh, up top! Up top!
Oh, no. Oh, my God.
Yeah, boy! Yeah, boy! Somebody get this fucking
It's
flag!
contested. We're good.
Yeah. No, he's gotta get it. Get it in the
Oh,
hog.
okay.
Let's go!
Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite is a game that has a lot of mixed feelings from me. I feel that games as a service is going to destroy gaming. I feel that the idea of selling people mediocrity and just building crap on top of it to sell is one of the worst ways you can sell a game. Because while financially it might be amazing, the burnout that you give the player is just absurd. The way that you constantly harass them with microtransactions and even filing patents. Companies like Activision have filed patents to get players to just constantly being in a state of wanting to buy more stuff. It's just the complete antithesis of what I think of gaming should be about, which is relaxing, fun, and enjoyable. Something you can put time into and be happy with it. There's no underlying greed. There's no underlying thing going on that's just so sinister that you think, wow, this isn't even a video game anymore that some passionate people made. This is a product to extract money out of me. And unfortunately, Halo Infinite has those problems. It has those problems, but at the same time, it is on the surface level cosmetic only, which is also as a caveat because, you know, I was a Reach baby, and I really like the customization in that game, and that encouraged me to keep playing. So it does, in fact, affect gameplay. So I don't want to hear this argument from the fanboys saying, oh, you know, it's cosmetic only, it doesn't affect gameplay. Yes, it does. It affects progression. But if you can get past that, if you can get past all the dirt and the sliminess of 343, this is one of the best multiplayer games you can play today. That has a population, I should say. I should preface that. The gameplay is amazing. It is so much fun to blast enemies. It is so much fun to get into a warthog charge with your bros and just tear people up. It is so much fun to use that grappling hook or all these other little mechanics they've added and just wreak havoc in multiplayer. The game is receiving updates. It is incomplete feeling. But I feel like this is one of those games as a service games, along with Total War Warhammer 2, where I can excuse a lot of it. Because there are some passionate people making this game. This game has people who care about it making it. And yes, the greed from Microsoft and the greed from in the upper end of 343 is going to be a problem, I feel, later on. But for 2021, this experience I've had with Halo, as small as it is, was great, and going free to play was the deciding factor of this being, you know, a great game and first on my list. It was a good idea to do that. I know people are going to complain about that, how it's not the same as old Halo with all that customization, but this was the right decision. This is the right decision because now we will have a good player base as long as they keep delivering new content. And this is probably one of the best free-to-play games you could actually just play. Like, I'd expect this game to be $60, right? With the campaign. And you'd have to pay for the multiplayer and the campaign. And I feel, okay, you know, maybe if you kind of mix campaign and multiplayer, it would be almost worth the money, but there's so much missing. But the fact that it's free to play really helps it here. It was the absolute right decision, and I'm glad it is because I'm able to play with this game with so many friends. We don't have to buy 4 copies of it to get it going, all right? We don't have to buy 4 copies. I got people in my group who were diehard Halo fans, and they're not touching the single player because it's just not worth the money. I don't think they would even touch the game if multiplayer was part of that package, if you had to pay $60 for the multiplayer. Because there isn't a lot here, unfortunately, but because it's free to play, it can be elevated. We can work with that. And the fact that there's no directly impacted gameplay, you know, decision bullshit with the microtransaction is just a massive positive. The shooting feels excellent. The controls for the vehicles are great. The online is just as addictive as it was back in the day, honestly. There are some things changed here and there, but I feel like they learned their lesson from Halo 4 and 5. Finally, they decided that, hey, let's not make this a fucking Call of Duty game and just watered down like Halo 4. We're going to take what was eventually fun about 5 and just have it as a base for Halo Infinite. Let's not just, wait a couple months for it to be good. There are a lack of modes. There is a lack of content, but because it's free to play and because you can have fun getting right into it, I feel that this game is able to hold its head above all the doubt and all the problems, and it's just a great title to play. It's really hard to explain why I like it so much, but when you get a friend with you in a Warthog, it feels like old school Halo, but even better, honestly. I'm a big Reach guy. I had nostalgia for Halo Combat Evolved, but I wasn't really into the multiplayer scene for the other games. I really played it for the story. And this game, I could sink hours into this game. I really enjoy it, and that's why it's my game of the year. It's a game with a lot of shortcomings on one hand, but they got the gameplay so right, so perfect, that it can only go up from here in my opinion. I hope it only does go up, because this is a real good game, and I really don't want you guys to sleep on this one. This was a lot of fun, and if you can find some other people to play it with, it's an amazing experience. I can't describe it in any other way but that. Well, 2021 came and went, and it was actually not so bad. I enjoyed a lot of the games that came out this year. Some of which I didn't even get to really talk about here, because I just didn't play enough of them to really put it on the list, but I enjoyed them nonetheless. We'll be talking about the games that didn't make the list. The games that were really not deserving of that. They deserve their own list. I think you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for that. I'm out.